All right. I think we're live. Anyone there in the chat want to confirm for me? Looked like it was lagging a little bit, but I think we're good to go now. Just want to confirm. Let's see here. Anyone? We good? We live? Confirm? I think. All right, we're good. Awesome. Appreciate you there, Eldon. Shouts out, first of all. Yeah, everyone, Nick Morrow here. Happy Friday with Occupy Fantasy. Very excited to help you break down this UFC 319 card from betting perspective, DFS perspective, and everything else. As always, I'm going to go through fight by fight. I'm going to kind of give you my take. Watched a bunch of film on this card. Super excited for it. A lot of moving parts. We've had fights added, fights canceled, everything else. But as always, I will be leveraging the Occupy Fantasy model. If you could, check out the links in the description below to get access to our premium content. That's the slate breakdown from Derek Phillips, the model, which I just referenced, ownership projections, lineup builder, all that good stuff for just $7. One of the best entry points in the entire industry as far as premium content goes. And yeah, we've been hot. Appreciate you guys getting in here, Eldon and Justin. Let me know that the technical difficulties have passed. So very excited to break this card down, guys. If you could also just like the video, subscribe to the channel. A little bit of housekeeping, and we'll get things rolling. Last week we did do a contest. I can't remember the winner's name. If you're here, shout yourself out, but we did give out a month of premium. I don't know that we're going to do that again this week, but guys, the likes, the subscriptions, it helps us keep this free content coming out to you. If you could comment as well below the video. I love talking to you guys while this is going live, but the comments below are always happy to answer as well. This is one of the best cards of the year, and I'm not being hyperbolic. Khamzat Chimaev taking on Idris Plessis in the main event for the middleweight belt. Just a massive, massive fight. One of the best fights that the UFC can put on. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it here. And again, I'm going to go through, give my breakdown. At the end of the video, I'll give some best bets. Throughout the video as well, I'll talk about the top owned plays on DraftKings as well as the top OF index plays in the model. Again, OF index is our proprietary number where we are rating the upside of these plays for DFS. But yeah, a lot of stuff to get into here. A little bit of housekeeping. Again, I keep saying that. Sorry to be redundant. We went 3-2 on best bets last week. First round, Walker didn't come through. We did hit Feely as an underdog, as a long shot, but we'll get to the bets at the end of the show. I have 6 this week. Again, love this card. Did a ton of work researching it. So yeah, let's get a few extra out to you guys. Again, those best bets. I think we're 11-10, even with an 0-4 Abu Dhabi week in there. So we're heating it up again, which obviously we love to see. But definitely going to talk through everything from a DFS angle as well. So don't want to be too redundant here. Let's get into the fight by fight breakdown. And yeah, I mean, pretty logical to start with the main event between Khamzat Chimaev and Idris du Plessis. Looking at the fight odds right now, Chimaev around a -240 to -260 favorite, depending on your book. So du Plessis is the champion. He's defended his belt multiple times, but he is a moderate underdog here. Du Plessis has been outstanding as far as DFS goes, scoring 100 points in all but one of his fights over his last few. And yeah, that one fight against Strickland won 5 rounds, but no real takedowns there. He just had one. But here, I mean, the narrative everyone's spinning this week is it's probably Chimaev early or du Plessis late. I think there's a little bit more nuance going into this that we do need to discuss a bit. But yeah, this is just a tremendous matchup. Du Plessis, yeah, I mean, as far as his takedown defense goes against a wrestler like Chimaev, that's something we need to look into. Just a 50% rate in the UFC. And he hasn't really faced a wrestler since Derek Brunson. And if you remember that Brunson fight, Brunson was getting up there in age. He was losing that first round. He got taken down pretty easily. We've seen Whitaker take him down, which obviously isn't a great sign, knowing that Whitaker isn't really known as a wrestler. So here against Chimaev, I think it's almost a certainty that Chimaev's going to be able to take him down. The question becomes, will Chimaev finish him in those positions early? And if he doesn't, will his cardio hold and carry him into the later rounds? On the feet, I think this fight is competitive. These are two guys who throw a lot of volume, which means they both score well for DFS. Dricus lands over 6 significant strikes per minute. Chimaev lands over 5. Chimaev actually has solid striking defense, though, only absorbing just over 3. Du Plessis absorbs more, but you got to consider the level of competition he's facing. I mean, the fights against Strickland, Adesanya, even Whitaker, I mean, that was a short one, but taking on elite strikers, guys that are going to be able to land. But he won the moments, even if he wasn't winning the minutes in those two Strickland fights. I mean, the last one was dominant, not to say that wasn't. And then Adesanya, it looked like he was falling behind a little bit, but he started to break Izzy in that fight. Obviously, he's on a tremendous run. And I want to be entirely transparent. Of all the fighters in the UFC, I think Duplessis has cost me more money than anyone. I don't like his style when you watch him on film. Doesn't really have sound footwork. He makes crazy mistakes in the grappling, just kind of uses his brute strength to kind of muscle through guys. So here against Chimaev, I'm picking Chimaev, but as I say that, I want to include the caveat that I've had a lot of issues in picking Duplessis. I do think there's some value on him as a champion at a plus 200, but Chimaev is an absolute beast, right? The narrative on him, just tremendous wrestler, maybe the best one-round fighter in the history of the UFC. We have seen him extended against the likes of a Gilbert Burns and a Kamaru Usman, but a little bit of revisionist history, I think, across the industry this week. Everyone's talking about how bad his cardio faded. Against Burns, he faded in the second round, came back alive in that third round, and he did clearly win the third round against Usman, in my opinion. Some ugly visuals where he's kind of shooting from far out, not getting all the takedowns, but he was securing takedowns against one of the best wrestlers in the UFC. Then last time out against Whitaker, obviously just completely ran through him. So as good as Chimaev is, there are still questions that need to be answered. But I will say, I think in terms of technical ability, especially on the mat, he's the best maybe we've seen in a long time, maybe since a Khabib. I know Merab gets a ton of takedowns, but that's more just it's not as much technique with him as he's just going to keep going and going with his infinite cardio. Chimaev does not have infinite cardio. He does rely on technique. He does need to be, what's the word? Frugal with his exertion in terms of what he's going after, but I do think he's the better fighter here. I think on the feet, in terms of technical striking, if they're at boxing range, I think Chimaev can be competitive, but I say this in every Duplessis fight, and Duplessis does tend to prove me wrong. He's just a monster. He can take a lot of damage and return it. I will say, if we're looking at some of the graphics here, Chimaev does rate as the best play in our occupied model with a 183 OF index rating, and he's not priced as the top play in the model. So he's going to be popular. We have him 60% owned, but it's for good reason. He's underpriced, in my opinion. If you're building a bunch of lineups, I do think it's wise to maybe hedge with a little bit of Duplessis. But my pick's Chimaev. Again, I've been wrong on Duplessis. I think a lot of people have. I'm willing to kind of hold that L, but I think here against Chimaev, I have trouble going against Khamzat. Yeah, and he looks tremendous in this camp. A little bit of narrative here as well. He's been training with TJ Dillashaw's strength and conditioning coach. Dillashaw famously on a lot of EPO on his title run. USADA no longer a thing. I think Chimaev, with his 10 million Instagram followers, is the better champion for the UFC in terms of marketing. They like Dricus in this fight. It's not going to be rigged or anything, but I do think Chimaev is the side here. Again, looking at DFS, if you want to get different, Dricus is a decent way to do it, but he's also very popular. He's actually the fifth most popular play on DK, so he is the most popular underdog, even though we want to be heavily exposed to Chimaev. When we get to the best bets at the end of the show, I do have Chimaev in one. We'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, really, really fun fight. I'm thinking Chimaev gets it done in one of the early rounds, but I'm not sold that his cardio is going to completely fall off a cliff if he doesn't. So yeah, he's my pick here. I like him, but again, I just want to be completely transparent in that I've been wrong in a lot of Dricus Duplessis fights. I will get to the chat, guys. Again, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But let's go right into the co-main event here. Another really intriguing matchup we have between Leroy Murphy and Aaron Pico. Pico was originally scheduled to take on Movsar Evloev here. Evloev had to pull out, I think, due to injury. Some say it's because he just wants to wait for a title shot. But if we're being completely honest, the winner of this fight probably ends up getting the title shot over Movsar. And yeah, really, really interesting matchup. So Pico coming over from PFL/Bellator. This guy has been highly touted his entire career. He was in the Olympic trials, I think, as a 17 or 18-year-old. Made the semifinals in qualifying, was very close to being an Olympian, but he wasn't given a decision. And honestly, it could have gone either way. He could have been an Olympian, but it is what it is. Great wrestler. So you take that and you combine it with the fact that he is also a former Golden Gloves champion boxer at a very young age. This guy has been in front of the spotlight for many, many years. His run in Bellator is interesting, right? He breaks into that promotion. Bellator does something that the UFC does not do. They will bring guys in for their first professional fight. They will bring them in as amateurs and turn them pro. But Pico's entire career has been with Bellator, and then the one fight with PFL. So obviously he's not taking on the quality of competition that he's going to see in the UFC, but he's been seeing really solid regional competition compared to what a lot of these guys see before they break into the promotion. Recently, I mean, this is a big narrative this week. A lot of these Bellator guys, your Pitbulls, Patchy Mix, just have not really been performing well in their debut. And he's taking on a guy here in Lerone Murphy who's undefeated. Murphy, another guy who I've underestimated a little bit. I have picked him in a few of his recent fights. But yeah, he's very much kind of a point style fighter. He does get by on volume and just avoiding strikes. 61% striking defense, really, really solid. One of the best in the division in spite of the fact he's taking on a quality level of opponent. But the key for me here is actually the 52% takedown defense. So I don't know that he's going to be able to keep this fight standing. Pico, again, really aggressive wrestler. I think we see the best version of Pico here as well. And going into this week, I was thinking I would be on Murphy. I do think there's value on him as an underdog, around plus 150, depending on your book. But I do think Pico has the style to get this fight won in his favor. And I also want to mention the fact that, again, Lerone Murphy is taking this fight on short notice from the UK. He only flew into Chicago, I think, Monday or Tuesday of this week. So probably having to acclimate a little bit to the time zone. And again, very short fight camp for a tricky matchup. And if you go through the film on Lerone, this is what flipped me. The Santos fight, he was taken down, I think, 4 times. Ige was taking him down easily. And these are two guys who are decent wrestlers, but nowhere near the level of a Pico. Pico, we've seen him KO'd early in his career, but Lerone really not known for his power. I mean, just looking at his recent fights here, decision. So even if you're picking Lerone as the underdog, I don't know that he's going to score all that well. And I do think there's other underdogs at this card, that we're going to have to consider. Looking at the graphics quickly, Pico is very popular at 42%. So the best reason to maybe play Lerone might be leverage in tournaments. But I do think Pico gets it done probably via decision. He's also a great striker, really powerful left hook. He works the body well, just really, really dangerous everywhere. Lerone is as well, but if you can kind of consider his recent competition, I mean, he's taking on older guys, Emmett, Ige, Barbosa. Not that Ige is old, but these are guys who are a little bit weathered. I think Pico might not even be where he will be in terms of what his prime could be. So a fighter who does seem to continue to improve. I'm not going to lie. I'm not ignorant to the fact that these Bellator guys have been struggling, but I do think Pico just has the style here to beat Lerone, knowing that he will be able to take him down and probably keep him down. If not, I do think he's going to consistently just go to those takedowns, and he does have the cardio to last for 3 rounds easily, in my opinion. So will he get the UFC jitters? Will the big crowd and the lights be too much for him, as it maybe was for someone like Pitbull or Patchy Mix? I don't know. But I do think stylistically this is a more favorable matchup. And one more piece of narrative. When the PFL and Bellator were kind of merged, like their bigger fighters were really complaining, trying to get into the UFC. Everyone knew Patchy Mix, everyone knew Pitbull, but Pico was the guy that Sean Shelby Maynard had circled. And they kept asking Dana, like, oh, are you going to bring over Patchy Mix? Are you going to bring over a Johnny Eblin, who was on a run at the time? And he said, I don't know. I do know the guys, the matchmakers really like Aaron Pico, though. We're talking to him. So it's funny that Pico was kind of their priority. I do think that's notable. I do think they want to get him a win here, probably set up the fight with Alexander Volkanovski at the end of the year. But a competitive match. I mean, if you're chasing underdogs, I do think Murphy's live. It's just for DFS. I just don't know how well he scores. I will say the money line value is on Murphy. I'm probably not going to have any sort of action on Pico. He will be someone I'll mix into DFS exposures, but proceed with some caution there for sure. Rainer, what time is the fight? I believe the card starts at, I want to say 6:30 tomorrow. Main card probably 10 p.m. Again, it's in Chicago. So yeah, it's going to go a little bit later than some of these East Coast cards, but yeah, it'll be good. Locke Bresner, love the name. Opinion, Michael KO. I like it. Kai KO, MVP moneyline, Murphy by decision. For the number, I'll say I like it for sure. plus 2,500, that's really appealing. I want to go crazy on it. Obviously, when you're pulling together 4 legs, also with the outcomes, it's tricky. But as a dart throw, man, I think you could do worse. I like it. I'd do it. Again, I think Pico's going to be my pick, but am I confident? No, I do think Murphy is the value. So that's a good one, man. And I love the picture too, the old Brock Lesnar class photo there. I actually use that as a profile picture for, I think it was like a golf video game or something years ago. So shouts out to you on that. Another pretty interesting matchup here between 2 strikers. We have Jeff Neal taking on Carlos Prates. Jeff Neal's kind of been reduced to a gatekeeper in some ways, but gatekeepers are not all created equal, right? We talk about Neil Magny. Like, if you could beat him, you probably should be ranked at 170 pounds. If you could beat Jeff Neal, you might be a top 5 guy. And that's kind of been the case. His only losses recently have come to Ian Machado Gary and Shavkat Rakhmonov. That Machado Gary fight was extremely competitive. Rakhmonov fight, I mean, he was landing pretty well in that fight until he got choked out in the third. But a guy who's never been KO'd. So against Prates here, I do think Neal's a live underdog. I just think the styles here are going to favor Carlos. Again, also coming off a fight against Ian Machado Gary, where he struggled early, but he did win that 5th round convincingly and almost finished Ian Gary as a heavy underdog, and he took that fight on short notice. Prior to that, stringing together 4 KOs and bonuses in a row. But yeah, it's 2 strikers, but the styles are very different, right? Jeff Neal, kind of a traditional boxer, doesn't throw a ton of kicks, very much stationary in his movements. And Prates is a Muay Thai fighter, so he's going to be throwing the knees, the elbows. They say Muay Thai, you have 8 limbs. In boxing, you only have 2. I don't think it's that simple. Jeff Neal does throw the occasional high kick, but I do think Prates here stylistically should be able to get it done. My one concern is this, especially if you're paying up for him, right? Neal has never been KO'd. And Prates, not a super high volume striker. I mean, he has knockdowns in all these fights that he's scoring well and KOs. So he's scoring well as an expensive guy, but is he going to be able to finish a guy in Neal who's never been knocked out before? I don't know. We could go back to even the Trevin Giles fight, a fight where he dropped the first round, was super tentative. And we kind of see that from him at times. He admitted this week that he's been chasing the KO. I think that's a big reason for that. So if he's going to start to fight to win and win these decisions, like he said, he's probably going to be more aggressive early, probably going to land more volume, which is a good thing in a matchup like this, because I do think the KO is going to be tough to come by. But he is going to be the pick for me, but I would be lying if I didn't say Jeff Neal is one of my preferred underdogs here. I do think he's very interesting. If this is a close decision at 7,100, I mean, even if he doesn't score tremendously, he could very well be optimal if we're seeing a lot of favorites hitting on this card. So Jeff Neal's someone I have circled that I definitely want to get exposure to. I do think Prates gets it done, but for me, most likely by decision. So I don't mind coming in under the fields on him in terms of exposure. It doesn't look like he's too popular right now, but we'll look into that a little bit later. But yeah, Neal's live as dog. Looking at the money line, plus 170, plus 200, depending on which book you use. But I do think Prates gets it done. But spoiler for the best bets, him by decision, it's like plus 250 to plus 300, depending on your book. I think Prates by decision is the way to go if you're looking for value there. One more fight, then I will go back to chat. But we got Michael Venom Paige here against Jared Cannonier. Really interesting matchup. So Cannonier coming off a very impressive performance against Gregory Rodriguez, in which he was getting kind of beat up bad, right? In a lot of his recent fights, he's been beat up bad. He dominated Vittori, but it came after he was knocked down and almost put away in that first round. Imavov absolutely brutalized him until he finished him. Baralo, many would argue that fight should have been called. Cannonier took a ton of damage, doing the chicken dance in there. He's still durable to a point, but it does seem like that chin could crack at any time. It's certainly been tested a lot lately. He is now, I think, 40 years old. Obviously not a great thing, but still a very dangerous fighter. Taking on a guy in Michael Venom Page who is very different in his approach. So Cannonier, kind of that marauder, obviously. Michael Page fights out of a bladed karate style stance, bounces around the entire time he's in the cage. Not a high volume striker, but a flashy striker. Does a great job countering. We kind of saw that against Magomedov. But yeah, another guy kind of similar to Prates, who I don't know is going to pay off his salary unless he finds the finish. I think he is capable here, but again, similar to Jeff Neal, I think Cannonier is a live underdog, and it needs to be discussed. If Cannonier were to lean on his grappling, and again, he's not some tremendous wrestler, but he does have it in his bag. He fights out of the MMA lab under Eric Crouch. I think they're going to put together a pretty good game plan. But at the same time, Paige in the big cage in front of a big crowd, he's going to be tough to catch. But Michael Paige did admit this week that he feels like he's in the wrong weight class. He should probably still be down at 170 pounds, but he said they weren't giving him any fights against high ranked opponents there. So he took this fight against Cannonier. But yeah, if it's a striking match, I think MVP dominates. Probably low volume, could find the finish. More likely than not, it does go to decision. I think Cannonier's live, but he probably needs to get the takedowns going. He's big. He does have KO power. But it's not the one-shot KO power that we saw from him earlier in his career. Most often going to decision in a lot of his wins recently. So I like Cannonier as a dog. I'm not going to pick him, though. I do think MVP probably gets it done via decision. But certainly there's a path for Cannonier here. And if he is grappling early, I think he's going to end up optimal. Again, takedowns do score better than significant strikes over on DK. And he's affordable. So Cannonier, another dog to consider. For me, I do like Michael Paige to get the win. But where he's priced at 8,700, if you don't think he's going to get the KO, he's probably not someone you need to be heavily exposed to. But yeah, let's just keep plugging along, guys. Making great time today. The opener for the main card pay-per-view, we have Kai Asakura taking on Tim Elliott. Asakura coming over from Risen, Japanese promotion, really, really credentialed. They gave him a title shot in his first fight. Kind of exposed on the mat there against Pantoja, but Pantoja obviously the best of the best in the world at 125 pounds. So it's tough to know how much weight we should really put into that. Asakura is massive. We saw this today when these guys faced off. True KO power, really, really solid striker on the feet. Not only with the hands, he does a really good job throwing knees up the middle. I think more of his recent KOs have actually come via knees and they have via punches. But he's taking on a guy here in Tim Elliott who has never been KO'd before, which I think is notable. The thing with Tim Elliott is he's another guy getting up there in age. Like if you're in the heavier weight classes, you can get away with being a little bit older. But at flyweight, it's tough. But I will say this. He has a path to victory. Tim Elliott does average 3.7 takedowns per 15 minutes. Asakura has shown that he struggles on the mat. He doesn't really have great jiu-jitsu. So Elliott could be live to find that early submission. I just think he's past his prime. He's been out of action since December of 2023. Talking about the journey, the long, winding road in his media this week, posting pictures of his girlfriend naked on Twitter. So I don't know how focused he is. With the long layoff, usually ring rust is more of a thing for guys that are really technical strikers that need their timing, etc. Elliott certainly isn't that, but I do think the time away from the cage is going to be a bit of a detriment to him here against such a big and explosive guy in Asakura. Again, Elliott's never been KO'd, but I do think maybe he's running into a wall here. I wouldn't be surprised to see him put the gloves down either in front of Asakura. This is a guy who does love to fight, so I'm not confident that he does, but if you listen to his interviews, it sounds like he's a little bit checked out. So I'm on Asakura here. The UFC's paying him a lot of money. They gave him the title shot. He didn't look great, but this is a guy they do want to build. The Japan market is a market they're definitely trying to get exposure in. They definitely want to have a show over there. They get the road to the UFC, to Suro Taira in that division, but there's not a ton of other fighters from Japan that have been doing all that well. So Kai is someone they definitely want to get their marketing machine behind. I think this is a matchup for him that he should be able to win. But again, Tim's never been KO'd. Asakura probably needs the KO here, but I think even if he's taken down, he has the size and strength and explosiveness to get back to his feet with relative ease. But again, Elliott, he has the better grappling. So maybe he looks good early and you get a price on Asakura live if your book offers it. Taking a quick look here. Not popping up in the top ownership or at the top of the model. But I do think Asakura, unlike MVP or unlike Prates, is someone I do want to have a decent amount of exposure to. Again, I do think he could find the finish here, even against the guy who's never been KO'd before. If you want to mix in a little bit of Elliott, even if it goes 3 rounds and he loses, he could be one of these guys that even in a loss could end up optimal. Shouts out to Alvin Hines, who was cut from the UFC today for steroid use, unfortunately. But we've seen it. If this card's heavy favorite in terms of results, then a couple of these really cheap underdogs could end up paying off, even in losses. And Elliott, a guy who grapples, is someone who's capable. But again, my pick's going to be Asakura. I think he finds the finish here, probably via KO. I just think Elliott's too far past his prime at this point. And it would be kind of crazy for Asakura to have another loss here, given how highly regarded he is by the UFC brass. All right, all right. Once again, here I do want to quickly plug the premium content here. We have the UFC slate breakdown. Derek Phillips plugging away on that. I do have an excerpt about one of our fighters that I'm going to show from Derek's plug in just a minute. We also have the Occupy model, which has ownership and ratings for fighters on not only DK but FanDuel as well. At the end of the show, I will do a quick build, kind of using the model on both sites. Also, again, we're going to have best bets at the end of the show. 6 this week in the best bet section. I got 4 long shots, but 6 that I'm feeling pretty good about. But yeah, let's keep plugging away here. This is a really interesting narrative, right? We got this. Trying to pull them up here. Everyone in the industry is trying to learn how to pronounce this guy's name. Baisanger Susurkaev. I think I did it well. Training partner of one Khamzat Chimaev, coming in here off of the Contender Series. So Contender Series takes place on Tuesday nights. Guys obviously fighting to get into the UFC. Pretty lackluster card. Dana only gave out 2 contracts. Susurkaev took that fight on short notice. And given how impressive he was, recording a KO in that one. They're giving him a fight here on just a few days' notice, so he could get on this card here with a Khamzat Chimaev. He beat Talha via KO, a really strong guy, pretty highly regarded. He was about a 300 favorite in that spot, but he's tremendous. And I'm going to wax poetic here for a minute about this kid, right? I mean, I watched this film for Contender Series, love what I saw. I watched more of it here. It's just enjoyable. So when you're studying fights, there's some guys like some of these women's fights, not to be sexist, like they're just rough to watch. Like when you're trying to do your research, it's an absolute pleasure to watch what this guy's been doing. This gets thrown around too much over the years, but he is comparable to Anderson Silva in his striking style. Hands down, always in a flow state, really good defensively. Against Talha, he actually got his foot caught on Talha. He like caught a high kick. And Talha tried to throw a hook and knock him down. Susurkaev kind of evaded it, like we see from Fiziev, just kind of bending his back, even with one foot up in the air. Just really, really skilled as a striker. Does a great job kind of feinting to set his opponents up and land uppercuts, which is one of his favorite shots. But he can land from everywhere. That fight, he actually finished with a body kick up the middle. He's taking on a guy here in Eric Nolan, who's also taking the fight on short notice, who is moving up a weight class. So Eric Nolan, former Marine, tough kid. Really funny at the press conference. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're not Khamzat, you're his butt buddy." And then Khamzat goes, "You're gonna get knocked out, bro. This guy's actually better than me." Is Susurkaev better than Chimaev? No, probably not. But he can wrestle as well, and we've seen it on his regional film. Really good grappler. Obviously, training with Chimaev as one of his main training partners. You're gonna learn to wrestle pretty damn well. And this kid's just great. I think Dana loves him. I mean, he's the feature prelim for a reason. Not only is he going to be a commercial for the pay per view, but he's also a commercial now for the rest of the Contender Series this season. There's 9 more weeks or 8 more weeks of it. Week 1 just happened, and they got this kid through Susurkaev, who they're really excited about. And Nolan, I will say he can wrestle a little bit. I don't think he'll be able to here. He does have KO power, but that's down at 170, mostly fighting for CFFC against much lower levels of regional competition, what Susurkaev has been seeing. I just think he's going to be outclassed here. I think the lights are going to be too much, but we've seen this at times, right? Like a BSD came in, moved up the weight class, got beat up by Zaleski, and he had a decent run. I actually think Nolan can make a little bit of noise at 170. I don't know that he's ever going to be ranked or anything like that, but he definitely has wins on that roster. I just don't think that's going to come here. Susurkaev, 800 to 1200 as a minus favorite, depending on the book you're looking at. And he's going to look really good in the Occupy model. Let's take a look here. 134 OFNX rating. He is extremely expensive. It's interesting. I do think he's live to find the first round knockout, but he's actually a guy who usually puts out a little bit of volume and kind of wears on his opponents. But I think here he's probably just going to run across the cage, look for that explosive finish. And I'm imagining he does get it. So I do like him a lot here. Love his upside. The model's saying he's a great play. Vegas is saying he's a great play. And the ownership isn't crazy. I mean, 33% is certainly high, but definitely someone I think you could get over the field on if you are playing enough underdogs. Someone I have circled. And he will be in a best bet that we'll talk about in a little bit. Not the most obvious one either, so definitely stay tuned for that. But I definitely think he gets it done. Shouts out Eric Nolan taking this fight on short notice, but I just think it's a little bit too much too soon, if we're being completely honest. Another really fun fight here, maybe the most binary fight on the card. Some would argue maybe it's the main event, but Mikhail Oleksiejczuk taking on Gerald Meerschaert. And I know I keep saying this, I'm picking the favorite, but I do think there is a live underdog in this matchup. I do think Meerschaert's someone you probably want to get exposure to in terms of DFS. When he wins, it's usually by submission, and finishes obviously score really well. Usually, if you're getting submissions, you're also getting takedowns, which also plays to his upside in terms of a DFS play. Just pretty cheap with a high ceiling, but he's very, very volatile, really slow on the feet, not a great striker. And he's taking in a guy in Oleksiejczuk who does his best work in the first round, coming off a KO win over Cedricus Dumas. That came after switching to that Fighting Nerds camp where he spent the entire 8 weeks of this fight camp training with the likes of Prates, learning to grapple better, we hope. But I do think he's probably going to be able to finish Meerschaert here. I will say this is a fight I want a lot of exposure to, right? If Oleksiejczuk wins, it's probably a quick KO. At 9K, that could be optimal very easily. But if he doesn't win, Meerschaert is someone who is going to probably be optimal, probably finding a submission in the second or third round. So I like Oleksiejczuk. I think he gets it done. He's going to be in a lot of my lineups. But Meerschaert's definitely an underdog worth mixing into your exposures. Let's take a quick look at chat here, see what you guys are up to. And yeah, we're ripping through this card. Definitely appreciate it. Yeah, that kick was awesome, man. Right up the middle. And that dude Talha, he made the gross noise. And yeah, he's taking on a shorter opponent here. It's funny. Nolan and Susurkaev are listed at 6'2". Nolan, appreciate you, bro. You are not 6'2". And then Eagles also saying Kai 1 round KO. I could see it, man. I mean, I do think Elliott could take him down early, but I don't think he's going to be able to keep him down. And that's maybe the difference. So if it doesn't come early, I do think it still comes. Pause. But yeah, let's keep plugging away here. Speaking of boring fighters, we got Lupita Godinez here as the favorite against Jessica Andrade. We've seen mixed results out of Lupi. Pretty impressive having the win over Tabitha Ricci, which is obviously aging really well. Other than that, I'm really not all that impressed with her resume, coming off a solid win over Pilastri. I don't rate Pilastri all that highly. She did score tremendously well in that fight with 8.5 minutes of control time. She is the better grappler in this matchup, taking on a fighter in Jessica Andrade, who kind of struggles to defend the takedown. I'm going to pull up the stats on this one, but Jessica Andrade, kind of similar to Kevin Holland, is much better fighting down at 115 pounds compared to what she is at 125 pounds. Coming off 2 losses to Natalia Silva and Jasmine Juice Davicius, who are actually top 5 fighters now at 125 pounds. But prior to that, 2 wins at 115, including one over a fighter in Mackenzie Dern, who I actually think is comparable to Lupi in some ways. Obviously, Dern, the better jiu-jitsu player. I do think Lupi is the better wrestler, but we have seen Lupi kind of flaky at times. She struggled to take down Angela Hill. And Angela Hill's not really known as someone who can keep fights standing against wrestlers either. And Andrade's takedown defense at 115 pounds is much better than it is at 125 pounds. The stats we have are for both weight classes, 71% takedown defense. That's not terrible. And we saw her against Rose when she captured the title at 115, slam Rose and just muscle her to the ground and knock her out with a slam, a la Elijah Smith a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I really like Andrade as an underdog here. And I'll include this caveat. I think Lupi could take her down and make this a boring fight. Push her up against the cage, get a few takedowns, just win on boring control time as the crowd boos and boos and boos. But I think more likely Andrade is able to keep this fight standing long enough to land enough power to really hurt Lupi. And maybe she doesn't finish her, but I think she's going to have the bigger moments. I think she's going to cause more damage. And as we've seen in a lot of fights recently, that is what is winning these days on the scorecard. So Andrade is wildly inconsistent. So I do want to kind of include that as a caveat here. But to me, she's one of my favorite underdogs on the card. A little bit crazy, I guess. I know that there's some sharp people I know on both sides of this one this week. But I think Andrade is just a different animal at 115 pounds. Looks like she made weight fine, even with the wonky scale today. So shouts out to her for that. But Lupi, to me, she's talented. She's just inconsistent, tends to fight to the level of her competition. And if she spends too much time on the feet here against Andrade, I think she's in trouble. All this being said, Lupita Godinez, if she does win, she's going to score well for 8,400. Obviously, going to be getting the takedown she needs to kind of pull away. But I'm going to have more exposure to Andrade. And let me pull up the model on my other screen. Let's see. In terms of ownership, I can't imagine Andrade is that popular. Around 26% owned. These two are virtually owned the same on both sides, floating between 20 and 30%. So I prefer Andrade here. I think she's one of the more live underdogs. I could sound and look really stupid if Lupi can keep her grappling going for 15 minutes. I just think Jessica's a different fighter at 115 pounds, and everyone talks about how old she is, but she's not that old. She's only 2 years younger than Lupi. It's just she's been fighting for so long; it kind of seems that way. But again, I think 115 is her natural weight class. If you look at the face-offs too, this is the very rare matchup in which she's going to have a size advantage. So again, Andrade is one of my favorite underdogs this week. Another fun matchup here, and this is where we're going to be able to show you a little bit of the daily plug. Shouts out to Derek. Chase Hooper taking on Anthony Hernandez. Hooper, the Dream, formerly the Teenage Dream, kind of similarly to Andrade, has grown up in the UFC, right? Another guy who used to fight at 145 pounds, moved up to 155, and he's looked a lot better lately. That being said, he's kind of taking on the old men of the division, Jim Miller, Clay Guida. Really impressive performance against Borshev, Slavaklaus, where he knocked him down, shocked everyone. Wins over Levitt and Fiore kind of are what they are. But Hooper's been impressive. He's filling out that frame. He looks good at 155. He's tall, he's big, he's long. And while his striking still isn't great, his chin is kind of there to be caught. It's improved dramatically. Training with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, using his length to his advantage, throwing a lot of kicks, teeps up the middle, keeping the distance and keeping himself safe. And then when guys do crash in on him, able to kind of secure those takedowns. He is one of the bigger favorites on the card here, taking on a fighter. And Alex Hernandez, not Anthony Hernandez. Who was once one of the more highly regarded prospects in the UFC, had that KO over Beneil Dariush, talked a ton of shit, got humbled by Cowboy Cerrone, and he's kind of had mixed results since then. Another guy who's kind of floated between weight classes, similar to Hooper. So while some guys at 155 are going to be tough for Hooper in terms of strength and size, I actually think Hernandez, a guy who's also fought down at 145, shouldn't be too much of an issue for him in that regard. But Hernandez is still the better striker here. The issue with Hernandez is if things aren't going his way, he does tend to fold a little bit. As impressive as those wins over Holloway and Hubbard are, those were very close fights. I mean, he did have a lot of control time over Holloway, but everyone does. And that's really not going to be a path for him here against Hooper, who's just tremendous on the mat. I do think Hooper gets it done, and I know Derek is definitely on that side as well. Pulling up the clip here from the MMA Daily Plug. And again, just to plug the premium content, no pun intended, you're going to get excerpts like this on most of the fights, at least the fighters who we feel are going to be very important for your DFS bills. But over this 5-fight winning streak, Hooper has alternated massive striking totals, multi-takedown performances, and 3 submission wins to an average of over 113 DK points. He is top 5 in the model on both sites. He's going to be near 40% owned, but he likely has a very high floor of all the 3-round fighters when you consider that he is wrestling and finishing upside. So I really do like Hooper here. I am going to admit you're going to be holding your breath a little bit in that first round. I mean, Hernandez could catch him. He has come out hot, and it sounds like in interviews, too, that's kind of their game plan here. But assuming Hooper can stay safe, use his length, use the big cage, and take this fight to the mat, I do think he's the rightful favorite. Probably finds a submission or a ground and pound finish. Hernandez, decent takedown defense at 71%, but it only takes one for Hooper to find what he needs to maybe get that finish. So another best bet we'll talk about a little bit. Again, definitely stay tuned for that. I like Hooper here. I think he gets it done. But again, this is the youngest fighter he's seen in a while. One of the better strikers he's seen in a while. So proceed with some caution. But I do think Hooper's upside as far as the DFS play goes is tremendous. Another closely lined fight here. Let me take a quick look at chat first. Shouts out Hamza here. Yeah, the fights are tomorrow night, man. We're here a night early. This time tomorrow, we'll be in the middle of the card. First fight is at 6:30 p.m. I believe both slates lock at 6:30 p.m. But again, I'll have best bets for you as well if you're not a DFS guy. But one of the best cards of the year. Definitely recommend tuning in at least to the prelims. And one of the better prelims we have here between Edson Barbosa and Drakkar Klose. Edson Barbosa, another fighter, kind of traveling between featherweight and lightweight, right? So this is a tricky one. And I love Edson Barbosa. He's one of my favorite fighters. He has been for years, just a really good striker, super dangerous. He is getting up there in age, which is why he's moving back up to 155 pounds here after struggling to make 145 at times. He looks huge coming into this fight. I mean, he's coming off a loss to Lerone Murphy. He did survive for those 5 rounds. Almost got finished by Sadiq Youssef in the fight prior to that, but dominated after that first round there. Went over Billy Quarantillo. So he's been pretty decent at 145 pounds, but moving up here against a guy in Drakkar Klose who has a path to victory if he's going to be wrestling. Shouts out to Jake, who used to do these videos. I talked to him a little bit this week. He said one of his favorite underdogs is Klose. So I do want to shout that out. I do like him for DFS. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, though, compared to some of the other dogs we're talking about, because Klose's most likely path to victory is probably via decision, probably via cage, pushing maybe a couple takedowns here or there. I do think he's outclassed on the feet here, but I do think he's going to be able to take Barbosa down. This fight should play out closely if it goes to the cards. No pun intended. Once again, I do like the value on Drakkar. If you're looking to play someone by decision. But we've seen Drakkar rocked at times. He hasn't been taking on the same level of opponent. He was brutalized against Joel Alvarez last time out. And while obviously Barbosa at this point in his career is nowhere near the ability of a Joel Alvarez, coming off a KO, I mean, you always have to be a little bit concerned about durability. So I'm on Barbosa here. Again, I'm a little bit biased. He's a guy I've loved for years as a fighter, but Klose is certainly live, especially if he gets his grappling going. And that's kind of a theme here. I mean, we got a lot of big underdogs. Klose isn't a big underdog, but we got a lot of underdogs on this card. If they grapple, they're going to be very live. If they don't, they're probably going to get picked apart. I like the Barbosa side, but definitely a fight you want exposure to on both ends. And Barbosa could score well in a decision again if he keeps his fight standing. Just keep in mind, if you're looking at the game logs, he's coming off 2 5-round fights. This is a 3-rounder, but he's still a guy who puts out pretty decent volume, around 4.1 significant strikes per minute. But again, just an interesting matchup with Klose here. And these are two guys who could show up great or they could show up terrible. We've seen multiple versions of both these fighters, and with Barbosa moving up a weight class, this is a very volatile matchup. Another Barbosa here, Diane Barbosa with an S, not a Z, taking on Karine Silva. This is actually a rematch of a fight that took place on the regional scene several years ago. Barbosa got the nod in that one. It was a very close fight. If you watch it, definitely could have gone either way. But Karine was scheduled to take on JJ Aldrich. Barbosa coming in here on short notice, probably thinking, hey, I beat this girl before. I can beat her again, even on short notice. Karine coming off a loss to Viviane Araujo, where she struggled. It was competitive, but this does, in my opinion, represent a step down opponent for her. I do think there's some narrative here as well. They've been putting Cannonier on some of these bigger pay-per-view cards. I saw her take on Marina Moroz in person on the O'Malley Sterling card a few years ago. And usually on these huge cards, like, they're trying to build prospects, but it's tricky here, right? Like, I think they were trying to build her against Aldridge, but Barbosa, kind of a similar archetype. These girls are the same age. They're from Brazil. They're both marketable. They're both dangerous. Barbosa, the better grappler. Karine, the better striker. But I do think Karine, with a full camp against a fighter she was supposed to take on who has kind of a similar style. Barbosa, definitely the better jiu-jitsu player, but Aldridge, someone who plays in the clinch, has judo, similar to what she's going to see from Barbosa here. I think she's able to get it done. Again, this is kind of mid to low level women's MMA. For that alone, there's definitely some merit on taking a shot on the underdog, especially in terms of DFS, especially if we're getting a lot of favorites on this card. But I do think Karine probably gets it done by decision, probably via narrow decision, but on short notice. I don't know what we see from Barbosa here. She's looked good, but again, she hasn't really taken on anyone great since she took on Miranda Maverick. Maverick took her down, and Barbosa couldn't get up from under her. Other than that, not too impressed by her wins in the UFC. Karine does have some solid wins over some vets. But yeah, am I confident in her? No. But I think with the full camp, she's the rightful favorite. I do think the line's a little bit wide. And if you're desperate for underdogs, you can certainly do worse than Diane Barbosa. One more fight here. Then again, we will do a build for both DraftKings and FanDuel. I'll give you guys my best bets. And yeah, any questions you guys have, whether they're DFS related, betting related, anything related to this card tomorrow, happy to answer them. But yeah, let's keep plugging away here. So we were supposed to have the Ultimate Fighter 33 finale fights on this card. It's flyweights and welterweights, right? Donchenko, the welterweight, was forced to pull out, I think, due to injury. That fight's rescheduled for the UFC Noche card. But we are getting the flyweight final here. Obviously, if you're the winner of the Ultimate Fighter, you get a UFC contract. We got Alibi Idris taking on Joseph Morales. Joseph Morales might be a familiar name for some of you who've been watching the UFC for a while. His most notable appearance, though, was a KO loss to Devison Figueiredo. Went to a tight decision against Eric Shelton, but yeah, I like the Idris side here. So when we're comparing these two guys, Idris trains out of Kazakhstan. He might actually have Shavkat in his corner for this fight, a guy who has spent a lot of time training with Shavkat. And as a flyweight, featherweight with a welterweight. That can only be a good thing, in my opinion. Morales is dangerous on the mat. He's very aggressive in his pursuit of submissions, averages 2.6 submission attempts per 15 minutes in the UFC, albeit we're talking about a very small sample size. But on the feed, I mean, there's nothing that great about his striking. He doesn't have tremendous power. He's okay fundamentally, but he's not that imposing. So he's very hittable in exchanges. Idris, I might have called him Idris, but regardless, he throws a lot of big kicks. He's explosive. He throws knees. We've seen him knock guys out before, but his wrestling, I think, is actually the better of the two fighters in this match. And we see it time and time again. Quality wrestlers are able to usually survive against jiu-jitsu players if they are of a high level. And to me, Idris is of a high level, especially on the mat. And yeah, somewhat surprisingly, one of the top plays in terms of OF index. Maybe not if you're looking at the money line. He is a pretty big favorite. 110 OF index score, 9,400 on DK, 20 on FanDuel. But guy who can get the takedowns. He's very live for a finish as well. More likely KO than submission, just knowing that Morales' strengths are on the map. But I do like Idris here to get it done. So yeah, that's the fight by fight breakdown. I'll recap my picks at the end in a minute here. I'm going to get into the best bets, but quickly again, top plays in the Occupy model. We have Kamzat, Beisinger, Susurkaev, and Alibi Idris. And then highest owned plays, Chimaev, Pico, Hooper, Susurkaev, and Duplessis. So definitely keep that in mind. And yeah, let's take a look here at chat, and then we'll go ahead and get a build going on both sites. What up, Patrick? Appreciate you being here, man. On a Friday night, plugging away, grinding. I haven't looked at my MLB lineups in a little bit. Looking forward to hopefully sweating some MLB after this. PFL card on right now as well, if you are an MMA diehard. But yeah, let's pull up the model on my other screen. Again, if you guys want access to the model, you're getting ownership percentages on both sites. On FanDuel, it shows you the MVP ownership as well for fighters, so you know who people are using at captain. We have DK and FanDuel value scores. It also features the money lines averaged, I think, on both books. Their likelihood to win by KO, the projected rounds. So you can use it for betting as well as building for DFS. We also have the daily plug written by Derek. Again, very, very detailed. He's going to give you his best bets in there as well. He had a nice parlay last week. I think it was someone via decision, someone via finish, but paid out really well. Really sharp guy. We got a really sharp group for MMA here. Brian and Moose working on the model. Still got Jake in the Discord as well. Always a great resource. And we're often in there sweating the fights, talking crap, complaining about how boring some of them are, hyping our guys up. It's a fun group for sure. And again, $7 to get in there. One of the lower entry points in the entire industry for premium content. Before I get into my best bets, since we've been talking about DFS, let's go ahead and do a quick build, right? Again, I think Chimaev is underpriced. He's probably going to score tremendously well. It becomes a question of how many underdogs do you like? For me, I like Andrade. And again, I could look stupid for this, but I do think she's one of the easier clicks if I'm kind of plucking at underdogs. From there, it gets tricky. I think Pico's underpriced. If you like the Murphy side, you could play him as well. Definitely some value. Oh, I accidentally clicked King Green. What the hell? A few fights have been canceled this week, guys. Obviously, don't be using those fighters. So yeah, now we're left with 18 per fighter. I mean, I could go kind of favorites from here on out. And I think still score pretty well. So if you don't want to pay all the way up for like a Hooper or a Susurkaev, who are awesome plays at MVP, you can just go with Chimaev if that's who you think wins. Maybe hedge, have another lineup with Drickus. Probably you could use him in MVP as well and get to some of those other expensive favorites. But yeah, with 17 left per, again, I think Karine Silva probably gets it done. Yeah, don't love her price. I think we're going to have to get one more underdog in here. Let's see. I do like Barbosa, but Klose is very, very live. I think the upside of a Meerschaert is tremendous, but we already have Mikkel, so that's not the way I want to go. Elliott can score okay unless he gets KO'd immediately. Let's go with Dione Barbosa. Again, I'm picking Karine Silva, but this allows us to get all the way up to Hooper, who's someone who we really like as far as the model goes as well. You could play him at captain or Chimaev, but that's kind of where I'd be going on DK. Again, you have to play a couple underdogs. Again, I think a few of them do come through on this slate. On DK, it's a little bit trickier. The pricing's tighter, but we don't have to pay up for an MVP. So taking a look over here, since we didn't get any of the super expensive guys, let's try to jam in Susurkaev. I still want to go Chimaev. I think he's underpriced. But again, if I'm playing a bunch of lineups, I'm heavily exposed to Chimaev. I do want to have a few hedges with Duplessis, especially cheap, because he is going to be optimal if he wins. A little bit different here. Let's go with Gerald Meerschaert. Just pray he can take Michael down and survive early. I think more likely than not he gets starched. But if not, survive in advance. I'll go back to Pico, even though I do like Murphy. Let's see here. I mean, I don't want to go Andrade in both. It feels a little bit gross. I definitely don't want to go Barbosa in both. I don't know. I'll go Andrade for now. That leaves us with Barbosa. I mean, you could go to Klose and then upgrade Andrade, something like that. But this is a pretty decent build. And again, you're paying all the way up for Susurkaev. You don't have to do that. I love him. I think he's a tremendous play. But at the same time, if you want to go a bit more balanced, you're not on a ton of underdogs here. There are a lot of good ways to get different on this card, even with only 12 fights. There was 15 at one point. That would have been fun. Let's see here. Going to take a quick look at chat. Appreciate you, Eagles. Yeah, you're welcome. But let's get into the best bets here, right? I'm going to talk through all of these. Last week we went 3 and 2. Fluffy inside the distance was my favorite play. That turned out tremendously. We had Feely hit as an underdog, which is good to see. Really good job countering after a slow start against Rodriguez. But here's where I'm at this week. And I went with 6. I just love this card. I spent so much time watching film and digging in here. I think Alibi Idris by KO or submission. That fight could go to decision. Morales is tough, but I do think Idris should stay a step ahead. I think there's value on him to find the finish at plus 140. And again, all these best bets are going to be minus 200 or better. So keep that in mind. Meerschaert versus Oleksiejczuk. Under 1.5 is only minus 130 on DK. I absolutely love this price. I have to think Oleksiejczuk winning via KO round 1 is the most likely outcome. If he doesn't, Meerschaert probably took him down and submitted him. I don't know. I like that a lot here. You could play Mikhail inside the distance, but this kind of protects you if maybe Meerschaert's able to take him down. Here, Susurkaev against Nolan. I don't know. You can take Susurkaev round 1. I like the under 1.5. Again, he's a guy who's coming off a quick KO, but he does tend to put out a lot of volume. I do think he runs through Nolan here, but it's tough to find any value on a guy who's like a minus 900 favorite. I think the line on him to win inside the difference is like minus 4 or 500 too. So if you want to get some value on that fight, you want exposure to Susurkaev in this debut, under 1.5 is a play I really like. Hooper and Hernandez fight doesn't go the distance. I think Hooper is probably going to win via submission or KO via ground and pound, but this also kind of protects you if Hernandez does find that quick KO. So fight doesn't go the distance. Minus 170. Love that. Asakura point spread. If he doesn't find the finish, I do think he can still dominate on the scorecards here. And those point spread bets, if your fighter does win via finish, you still win the bet as well. Again, instead of paying minus 3 to 400, I think that's where you get your value. And then Chimaev by KO or submission, minus 140 to me. Really, really solid play. If you want to play Dritkis in the late rounds, you could do a few sprinkles as a hedge or bet him live. To me, though, I do think Chimaev probably gets it done early. But again, such a crazy matchup, such a fun fight. Could go a bunch of different ways. But yeah, this is where I'm at as far as best bets go. These are some long shots. And again, we don't track the long shots. I've hit at least one, I think, every week so far, except maybe that terrible Abu Dhabi week. But Andrade by KO or sub, right? And again, this fight probably goes to decision. If Lupi wins, though, it's probably via decision. Andrade is dangerous at 115 pounds. I think plus 400 for her to win inside the distance is value. Even if you don't like her to win, I think that's just tough to argue with. I mean, plus 400, just really, really solid value for her to find the finish. Oleksiejczuk round 1, plus 180, and then Gerald Meerschaert by submission, plus 400. You could bet both of those. And if Oleksiejczuk wins, say you bet 100, you win 280. Put 100 on Meerschaert, that's probably too much, but you would make 400 back. So either way, you're profitable as long as Oleg either wins in round 1 or Meerschaert wins by submission. I think those are the two likely outcomes there. I mean, like I said before, Prates, I think he gets it done, but probably via decision. And instead of paying a juiced money line price for him, I think by decision around plus 275, depending on your book for me, is the way to go. So again, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to get them in. Yeah, Patrick, Elliott is cheap. I do think Kai probably finishes him, but a lot of that's based on narrative. Elliott is going to probably be able to take him down early. So if you're looking for dogs, he's someone who could score well, even in a loss. Again, if a lot of favorites are coming through, I don't mind going there. Probably shouted that out as I was building. So yeah, if you don't want to go with Andrade in 2, or I don't know, you don't want to go with whoever else we had, Meerschaert down there. Elliott's certainly a good pivot. But yeah, guys, I think that's just about it coming up on the hour. Again, quick recap of my picks here. I'll just pull up the best bet screen as I go through them. But yeah, I think Chimaev probably gets it done early. Not sure if it's submission or KO, but I'd like to play inside the distance. Pico probably by decision. Wouldn't be surprised if Murphy was able to keep it standing enough to kind of edge it out. Obviously, he has a major experience advantage here, but he doesn't really have the one-shot power that's given Pico trouble in the past. So I do like the Pico side. Jeff Neal against Prates. Again, I like Prates by decision. Paige by decision. Cannonier very live as an underdog if he grapples. I don't know that he's able to catch Paige here in the big cage. I will say this too. Paige has the bladed stance. If you see Cannonier landing a lot of leg kicks early, it might be a good spot to bet him live. Elliott against Asakura. Again, I think Asakura gets it done inside the distance. Elliott certainly live as a dog. I just don't like the 2-year layoff. I don't like his age in the division. Susurkaev probably via first round KO. He's great on the mat, but I don't think he's ever had a submission professionally. Oleksiejczuk by round 1 KO. Meerschaert live for the submission, but again, I think Ola gets it done. I like to switch camps to fighting nerds. I think Andrade edges this out. Probably by decision. Just player on the money line. You're getting plus money. One of the dogs I prefer on this card. There's not a ton I'm really liking. Chase Hooper probably inside the distance. I am scared of that first round. I'm not going to lie, but I do think Hooper gets it done. Barbosa, again, I'm biased. I slightly prefer him. A lot of sharp people on Klose this week, Jake included. So shouts out to them. Could see Klose getting it done if he is going to get the grappling going. But I think Barbosa could maybe finish him on the feet if he can keep it standing. I do like Rene Silva by decision. I do think Barbosa is a good dog for DFS, though. I do think Alibi Idris probably finds a finish in the second or third round against Morales. Just a really, really talented, young, undefeated fighter out of Kazakhstan. Has a ton of momentum coming in here. Morales does have the UFC experience, but I just think even knowing that, he's kind of past his prime. Took a little bit too much time off, in my opinion. So once again, guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment below on the video. It helps us get more eyes on this in the algorithm. Again, this fight card starts at 6:30 Eastern time tomorrow. One of the best UFC cards of the year, in my opinion. We got the best bets, but again, behind the paywall, lineup builder, ownership projections, MMA Occupy model, slate breakdown by our Derek Phillips. And yeah, we're always in the Discord if you guys have questions. And if you want to just comment on the video, answering questions as well. Whoever won the contest last week, shout out to you for your week of or month of free content. Maybe we'll run that back next week. Brian away on vacation, so we're not going to do that this week. But we will be giving out more free months here and there. So definitely continue to tune in. Appreciate you guys. Have a great time tonight and tomorrow. Have fun and good luck. Take care.